Hello all, my name is Nick Leslie, and today I'm going to be making the first of two videos on how to start a side project post Softeng. This one is going to be talking about a specific technology called Next.js, which is a technology that I use to start a lot of my side projects, and I think would work really well with your existing knowledge base that you learned from this class. So to get started, let's go to WebStorm, and let's make a new project. And make sure to set it to Next.js, and then I'm just going to call this Softeng demo, and create a TypeScript project because you want to use TypeScript in general. You don't have to, but I would highly recommend it. All right, so it's going to ask you some questions. First off, do you want to use ESLint? I would say yes, because it's pretty helpful. It's not going to be as restrictive as the one you had in class. For example, it will allow unused imports and it won't yell at you about semicolons, but otherwise it's really good. I personally want to use Tailwind CSS. I would like a source directory. That way I can have stuff like a database directory and a utils directory. And we'll get into more of the power of Next in a second on why you can have stuff like a database directory. Do you want to use the app router? Yes, it's the new one. Do you want to customize the default import alias? No. All right. So my project is going to install. And while it's installing, let me talk to you a bit about what Next does. Next.js is a full stack React framework. This means that it gives you the backend and front end all in one project. And so I'm going to go over the very, very basic usages, but I would highly, 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 highly recommend to either go over this Learn Next thing or go to the docs. So when you make a Next.js app, let's first go to, it comes with a source and an app directory. And the app comes with your favicon, a layout, and a global CSS, and a page. So this page is what's going to be rendered when I first launch the app. So let's go ahead and do it. So if I go to localhost 3000, this is what I see. It takes a second because React is compiling my app. So one of the important things to know about Next.js is that it is a file-based router. This means that to create a new page on your website, all you got to do is make a directory named after the route that you want. So let's name hello as a route, and then make a new page.tsx. There are certain component names that are reserved. Like, for example, page, layout, and route are three that are like reserved to Next.js because they will treat them differently. So if I do export default function page and I return div hello world, now if I go to /hello, it will render this page. And that's super sick because all I need to do to make a new thing is I just need to make a new directory named whatever I want to name it. So let's just say Nick, right? And then make a new page called, again, page.tsx because it's reserved. To make Next recognize pages as things in your routing, you have to name them page. But, which the downside is that you've got a lot of files named page in your project, but the upside is that I can see the layout of my website just by looking at folders. So then if we return div hello Nick, if we go to /hello/Nick, we can see that it's there. But what if we want to generalize certain elements across routes? Like, we want all routes that are in the hello section to have hello. Let's take out the hello of each of these, and then let's make a layout. So we make a layout.js, and then export default function layout, and then let's return, first and foremost, hello. Right? So you see how it's only rendering hello now? What we need to do, and if I go to /hello, it will also be only rendering hello. Because layouts, basically, they're the first thing that's rendered, and then they render for everything in a directory lower than it. So this layout will apply to anything in /hello and any folder below that. So let's go in here and make it so that it takes in other routes. So we add props, and then we add children, much like any other time you wanted to add like components as children of other components. And we use React Node as the type, and then we do props.children. And you can see we're rendering out now hello world and hello Nick. But what if we wanted to take in a dynamic name instead of just Nick? What we would do then is we would rename the directory to have braces and have the key be the name. So we want to always specify the name. So we say braces name. And then in here we do props. And then we take in something special called params. And params takes in an object. And in this case, we're going to say name, because that's the name that we named the folder. And that's a string. And so now what we can do is we can, instead of rendering my name, do props.params.nick.name. Oop. Oh, misspelled. And we have just... And we just added it so that now we can say hello to any name. So let's go Dave, because this is now a parameter of the URL. The final function that one of the next functions I'm going to show you is how to make an API route. So let's make a new directory called API. And then in this API, I put it in the hello route. Let's make it up at the top. And then let's make a route.ts. In here, what you do is you export asynchronous functions named after the HTTP verb you want. So in this case, I'm going to make a get. So this will handle a get request at the /API route. And then to send back data, you return a next response, which is a special type from next. And then I'm just going to say .json, and I'm going to pass a message, and then hello world. And if you look, if we go to /API now, we have successfully responded to a GET request. And in this route, you can do stuff like interact with your database and all that. And one of the major differences between this and your Express server is this route is spun up dynamically. So it's only created when you need it. So you only pay for what you use. The final thing that I'm going to talk about is interactivity, because interactivity works a little bit differently in Next.js. And the reason for that is server-side rendering. So by default, every page in Next is actually compiled to HTML and then sent over as normal HTML. This is different from how React normally works, where your app is normally hydrated with JavaScript. What a normal React app does is it sends over an empty HTML page and then JavaScript builds your app around you. Whereas in Next, it actually sends over the HTML. This means that I could actually query the database in here, and the results of that database query would show up. However, the downside is that I try and set up a simple counter. So let's do const count set count and set it to 0, and then I do the classic button example of on click count set count plus 1, and then this is going to be angry because it needs to be an anonymous function, so we're just going to set that up, and then in the button we're just going to render the count, right? Oh, needs a parent. So now if we go back to /hello, it's going to get mad at me. And the reason for this is because we can't actually do any of the Java interactivity in a pure HTML page. But the way we get around this is by telling Next that, hey, this is a client component. Render it on the client side. So we set use client up here. And now it renders. Because, I forgot to add count in here. Because this is now a client-side component. in the sense that it is hydrated by React. However, this hello is still actually server-side rendered because it's in the layout, which the layout doesn't have use client at the top. So you're mixing client and server. And you can do this even further by, let's take this out and make it its own component. Oh, sorry. I need to rename that to be components because... and make a new... oh, nope, sorry. New counter. Export default function counter. And then we just return this button. But if you look, it's angry because we don't have count. So let's go back. Let's take this out. And then here. And then we can set this as a client component. Which, by the way, you don't have to set all of your components as client components. You can just set them to be like server components as well. You can mix and match. So now in this page, let's take out the use client because we want it to use the server. And then let's do counter. And if you look, we have our counter in, but the rest of this page is still server-side rendered, which is really, really powerful. So let's finally talk about deployment. Deployment is incredibly easy with Next.js if you do it in one specific way. So let's go to GitHub, and let's make a new repository for it. Call it video demo. And let's create this repository. And then we're going to add the remote. So first off, let's do git add period to add everything, git commit. And you can do this via like WebStorm. I just like the command line. Init. And then add this. So we're adding an origin. And then let's do git push. Make sure to set it up so that the upstream is main. And let's push. So now my app is up on GitHub, and I can go to a place called Vercel.com. And if you look, I've got a bunch of projects here, and I can click Add New, and all you need is a GitHub account for this, and it is largely free as long as you don't go over their like basic setup stuff. And if you look how I've got video demo, and it says just now, let's click Import, let's click Deploy, and if you can see, our deployment is queued. And it's running the build. It's installing the dependencies. It's going to take a hot second. But once it's back, it'll be powerful. We can monitor the build. There we go. It downloaded dependencies. It's creating the optimized build for me. It's looking at all of my files and saying, hey, what needs to be server-side rendered? What needs to be client-side rendered? It is checking the validity of types. If you see how it's generating static pages, those static pages are the server-side rendered stuff. All these don't need to be generated anymore. They're done. And this sets up my thing. This is the way that my app is built. If you look, we've got a not found page by default. We've got an API, and boom, we're ready. And so if we click on here, and we go to /hello, all of our pages are up. And they all just work. And this would work if you had a database that was like connect-toable via the internet. Additionally, they give you a pretty usable like URL. And you all can go to this now. And then finally, if we go to our API routes still work. The only difference is that we can't get this global state. And now, let's say I wanted to get rid of the main page and do good job on completing Softeng. Making sure to spell everything right. And then add. I'm going to name this congrats. And then we do git commit grats. exclamation mark. Oh, exclamation marks don't work. And then we finally push this up. And now, if we go to our dashboard and you look, it's building congrats. All you have to do is push to main and a live production version of your site will be rebuilt. Additionally, they have a pretty good logging. They've got a good list of sources. You can see like how your data is being used. You can view web analytics if you like enable them for specific things. But if you look, the second time it built, it's pretty fast. It's deploying the output. And we just got to wait like probably 10 more seconds. Nope, it's just now. And we visit. Good job on completing Softeng. So this is probably my favorite way to build personal projects because it's really easy to deploy stuff and it like is kind of batteries included. I can do my back end and front end all in one project and I don't have to worry about separately hosting them. I don't have to set up Docker. It's just easy and done for me. Of course, there are some downsides, like I can't use global state, and there are some things that like any super long running algorithm I would put somewhere else. And I also can't host my database on the same server. I've got to host it somewhere else. But in general, Next is pretty good. But if you're not happy with Next, I would encourage you to look for other frameworks and tools to deploy your app. And that's what the next video in this series is going to talk about. So thanks again for listening. Congratulations on completing Softeng, and I hope you watch the next video.